Hi, everyone. Here we are. Welcome. This is from A to B, presented to you by Osmo.com. Tuesday edition. No golf. We got to talk about other things. What do you want to talk about, Ben? You hungry a little bit? How's it
Yeah,
going?
I'm on a fake pseudo health binge, and I eat horrible food all the time, so I don't even know how you people do it. I've been trying to be good, and all it's done is made me hungry. So now I'm extra tilted. But yeah, no golf. I mean, we are going to talk a little about the hero, the 18-man
It's all right. The first
bootleg.
comment in the chat was, yeah, screw golf. So I don't think there's a ton of demand, but we'll do a
Oh,
5-minute segment on it.
yeah, we're going to just talk a bit about it. But Goat Hunter, I know golf is not. It's just not on the mind right now. It's football season and NBA season and whatnot. But did you watch the game last night?
I did. We'll talk about that. It was pretty solid. And we'll also, taking questions from the chat, we got to talk. We're going to discuss, I think we're going to break down favorite holidays. So if anyone's got takes on that or, rank the holidays, rate, overrate, underrate, we'll get into that a little bit. But yeah, I watched last night. It was a decent game. JJ Watt's a beast, dude. He made
Very
life
good.
hell for him. So it worked out all right. I was pretty happy from a DFS perspective. I remember you and I were texting like 2 minutes in. It's like, well, that was it, because we were talking about not playing Johnny Smith all day, and it was like, well, the first big play is a 61-yard touchdown to him, and it's like, well, guess we're done, because I think I had 1 of 20 and you had 0 of 20.
Yep.
So that wasn't looking great. And then that was what he ended the night with. He had 2 air yards on the night, so whatever.
I didn't think that was him. So like I was watching the game, but I was watching also a college basketball game, and I looked up and I saw a guy break three. I knew it wasn't Corey Davis. I was hoping it was Batson.
Yeah, I really thought it was bad, man.
And then slowly I realized that it was Jonnu Smith. But I had given up on Showdown. I didn't do good, but I didn't do horrible either. I actually broke almost even. So that was a miracle, because I had just resigned my fate after John. And it was just because, I mean, that game, it looked like in the first half was going Chiefs-Rams style. They could not stop each other.
Mm-hmm.
Lamar Miller, obviously, just secretly fast. I was stunned he didn't get caught on that 97-yarder.
Yeah, I forget who it was that was chasing him down, but that guy's a lot faster than Lamar Miller.
Like, yeah, I was just like waiting for him to, and then it's just like, well, he's not going to get there. But
yeah, it was cool. I had a fair amount of Lamar Miller. Yeah, no, I actually was live at the end. I needed Batman. I had a lineup that was actually the only difference between mine and the one that came in second was Batman over instead of Ferkser.
yeah,
Who caught all that garbage time stuff because the Texans were just playing prevent, so they let up the middle of the field, which, like, you could let the slot guy get a little too. He can work in the middle of the field. But the only difference between that and like the guys that came in second for my lineup, so and I had Mariota in the captain spot, so if he had thrown a long pass to Batson, that would have been pretty tight. And then the one that actually won was that lineup, but they switched. It was Miller and Mariota were switched in terms of captainship, which leaves a lot of money on the table, right? You save a lot of money playing the $7,400 guy instead of the $10,000 guy in the captain spot. So that gave this person a unique lineup, 250K score, great work. But it was close because the difference between Miller and Mariota was not much. So that guy who would have then come in solo sixth, I think, had Mariota beaten Miller barely. That's a pretty big difference for that person. So good for them.
Yeah, that's what you get with showdowns. I mean, it's so tight up there. Good job. We saw in the chat, good friend of the show, took down the Spy primetime slate. That's always a good little tournament.
Dude, Kiefer, Bill.
Texans are hot though. 8 straight. Kind of absurd that they're rolling like this.
Yeah, it's wild, and they didn't really, Deshaun Watson's got the rocket arm. They didn't really punch in the launch codes last night. It was pretty conservative overall offense, but they were able to run the ball. So if you can do that, like, there's no reason to really go nuts. But not a lot of deep passes or anything. Nice to see Demaryius Thomas back. That was why I made money. I just played him in 70% of lineups or something, and he was only 25% owned. He wasn't crazy involved, but the 2 touchdowns certainly helped. He's a big dude. He's a good red zone target. Helpful to have. That's good for them. And I think that should make Deshaun Watson sort of long term like a bit more of an effective player. Like the difference between Will Fuller and Demaryius Thomas. I don't know. Demaryius Thomas, like I have as being fast. I don't know. He doesn't look as fast, and they kept talking about how he wasn't very fast anymore last night. So I'll defer to the professionals on that one. But
not Will Fuller fast. Obviously.
Either way, he's not Will Fuller fast, and Will Fuller needs time. And the Texans' offensive line is really bad, so it can't create much time. So Demaryius should actually, I think, make them a bit more of an effective offense overall. So,
yeah, I mean, I think just from the Texans, if Deshaun Watson is healthy, and he seemed to be a little healthier, obviously he makes them go. They need him. He's got the weapons. If they can get some sort of balance with Lamar Miller, they could be all right. It's still, there are many tiers behind, I think, the serious contenders at the same time. But good for them. They were an afterthought after that start to the year.
Yeah, they totally were. Watson coming back off of the torn ACL, terrible offensive line. We didn't know what was up with J.J. Watt, but J.J. Watt's the second best defensive player in the league. So that's going to be pretty helpful, in my opinion. So good for him. Another, speaking of some success around here, the real Quay, 815 last night, who's an Osmo subscriber I end up talking to a lot. He's a big fan of... He likes to use the projections, likes to ask questions about him, and we have a good time talking about him. Spends a lot of time talking to me and Josh about sort of how to use that. Last night, he took down a tournament, solo first, with 120,000 people in it in NBA. So, moving on from the quarter stakes, my dude, on to the next level. Congratulations.
Yeah. No, NBA, obviously, we have just a ton of content. I can't even list it all with projections, shows, Slack, plenty of stuff. This show's traditionally not NBA. I know today's a little weird because it's normally golf, and we're going to talk some hero, as we said, but it's not at the top of the list just because it's an 18-man non-cut in the Bahamas. It's not even a real PGA event.
Right. And we're big NBA heads. Like, we were happy to talk about it sometime, but we're not going to be able to make it, at least for now, at least until football ends, it won't be like a core component of our shows, simply because we've got the 2-hour process show in the morning. We've got the deeper dive. We've got, the up till lock guys. So lots of NBA content here. We don't want to step on our friends' toes. So more likely that one of us shows up on one of those shows than we devote a ton of time to NBA here. But if you have questions, feel free to fire away.
So yeah, and today, just so people know, today's what we did, we kind of made it a Q&A and a mail, kind of a grab bag. So we have some questions that people sent us in Slack that we want to get to, and then if you have questions in the chat about anything really DFS related or life, just drop them in there. That's what we want to make this show today, kind of a little laid back, little Q&A. I did have a question that I wanted to ask. It is NBA related, but we can talk about it generally too. A question here from Slack was, do you adjust based on the slate size with NBA? Some of these slates, 13, 14, it's just monstrous. Then you've got, sometimes Tuesdays and Thursdays, a 3 or a 4 game slate. Are you more likely to stack a team there, attack one way, or does it really not change too much?
Yeah, the smaller the slate, the more I'm going to stack.
Okay.
On a full, and granted, those are the only 2 we're going to have this year. I mean, maybe like the day before the All-Star break, I forget, but 13, 14 game slates used to be very common. That used to be like every Wednesday, Friday kind of deal. But, since Silver took over, he understood the value of degenerates. It really is like partially a DFS thing that they spread it out a little bit. But it used to be every Tuesday and Thursday were 2 games.
2.
And
like the TNT doubleheader, honestly, that's like what it was.
Yeah, and that was like the big national games of the week, and then DFS made people a lot more interested in the NBA. It has certainly helped with its rise of popularity. The fact that the league fucking rules is like a big part of it too. But it used to be like Thursday was like the 2 big national games of the week. But you couldn't really play much DFS on. You couldn't play DFS on it back in the day. Like DraftKings was like, it's a 2-game. They used to talk like us, where it's like, oh, a 2-game slate. Why would you bother? But now it's more like, we've got 8 or 10 games on the big nights, and at least 4 or 5 pretty much every day. So, but yeah, the smaller the slate. Sorry, I totally went on a tangent there. I forgot what the question was.
No, no, that's a good one. That was one, like I said, I found as an interesting. We're going to be jumping around because the questions that I got already, all different topics.
All right. Well, what about you as far as
No,
NBA stuff
I'm right
goes?
in line with you. Obviously, when you have, I mean, you just want to think about it logically. On a 13 or 14 game slate, the winning scores could be so high because you can, if you really hit it right, the high guys from each of those games are going nuclear. Whereas with a stack, you're hitting the game right, but the third and fourth options in the game, there's just not that many points to go around.
Right.
So we're seeing that in the NFL too, with like the milli. Yeah, stacking, of course, it's certainly a component of it, and I totally get the use of it. When the scores are like nuclear high, 250 plus, it's hard for a stack to get there because your third wide receiver can't get 40, and sometimes that's what it takes.
Right. Yeah, that's 100% true. And then also the thing to look at is like if it's a 4-game slate or even like a 2-game slate, right? They've even got these giant like just night game deals now, which I've had some fun playing where it's just the 2-game night slate. If one of those goes to OT, you want 7 players from that game and 1 from the other one. You want the guy that hits the nuts. But if it's 13 games out there, you need to hit everything perfect. So, I'll occasionally, like if I'm going to stack on a 13 gamer, it's going to be something like the super highly correlated players. Like if I'm going to play Clint Capella, I will play him with Harden or Chris Paul kind of stuff. But what did I miss here?
No, we just, in our Slack, we just had another couple good questions coming in. One was from Chad. We are playing the hero, and I promise we will get there. Then they asked what these bobbleheads are. One is a jockey, Angel Cordero. I go to the track all the time at Saratoga. They always have giveaways. I have a multitude of them. And then the other one is me. When I took down a couple years ago, I took down a golf tournament, and I had a friend who had a stake in it. And he sent me that, which is hilarious. It's just me. It just says DK on it, and then on the back it says Jazz Raz. So, yeah.
That's Geno Smith back there.
Oh yeah, your boy. I always forget old Geno is lurking.
Also DFS related. I had a sweat. This was back when the NFL games were the NFL slates were Sunday, Monday, so you'd have to wait after Sunday night before Monday. Had a sweat where I was in first place. This was like my first big tournament when this is 2014. This was the week that Trey Mason and the Rams D combined for like 80 points. I know you've heard this story before, but a lot of people haven't. So, but was winning after Sunday night. Had to hold off the Miami Dolphins defense on Monday night, which was the massive chalk because they were playing against Geno Smith, who was legendarily terrible. And this was for my first, it was a 25K to first. It was $12, 19,000 people. And that's kind of how I got started playing sort of more professionally, is because Geno Smith went out there and handed the ball off like 45 times like a goddamn hero. Yeah. Didn't turn the ball over, and the Dolphins did not score enough points to overtake me. So, it was great.
All right, it's always, anytime you have a big win, you should commemorate it sometime with some type of memorabilia.
Absolutely.
We got some good questions in chat. They're actually rolling in. I don't know if you want to take them in any particular order.
I was looking at Restream, but if you've got the other one, then...
No, Restream. There's some good ones dropped in there. We did have one from our premium Slack chat. It says, what do you tell people when they ask you what you do for a living? Which is a great question because, you do have to live. And, a perfect example, Thanksgiving, I went to, my girlfriend's parents, their house, and they know me, but, there's secondary people who don't. I usually just say I kind of do financial analysis on sports.
Yeah.
I don't get into it too much. I try to be as coy as possible because it's just a wormhole, no matter what you say.
My favorite is the Levitan one, which anyone listening to us turkeys knows who Adam Levitan is, but he came up with a thing years ago about I work in predictive analytics. It's that works. No, I usually just tell people I do statistical analysis for a fantasy sports company, and people are either, I always downplay, I don't know. And people either get way into, the problem is it can be trouble because
it's always trouble.
Yeah, because people are either oh, that's nice, that's weird, or it's some uncle type or just random person who's okay, well, who should I start this weekend? It's oh my God, I can't.
Yeah, but that's always an interesting question. You got to feel it out. You got to see who your audience is. That's the best advice. This is actually a really good DFS question we got from Restream. Love any ramblings about how you go about choosing between attacking 150 lineup GPPs, a 20 max, or 3 max, or say a single entry. That's a common question, and it's definitely a good one because a lot of people take the same approach across all contests, and that couldn't be further from what you want to do.
Right. Yeah. Do you want to lead off on this one?
Sure. So I'll start with I think we're actually one of the many reasons why we talk about this a lot. We're really different, and you can speak way better to the portfolio type of, which lends itself to more of a 150. Like my preferred style is like a 200 man where I have like a bullet or two. Mm-hmm. So really what I think is one of the more underutilized things is know the contest size. So if you're playing a 3 max or something like that, a single entry, the contest is going to be generally less people because they can't fill, giant ones. And that just means that if you're really taking stabs in GPPs, you can isolate or get someone at low ownership who's not insane. And you want to balance that perfectly. So what I mean by that is if you're in, say, the milli in football, if you really wanted a guy super low owned, he would have to be not an optimal play because anyone who's even remotely optimal is going to garner 3-5%. There's just too much good information. There's no stones that are not uncovered. But in a 200 man, you can get a reasonable play from a team that's maybe a little against the grain. You can be the only one or one of a handful of people. So you don't have to be as aggressive in those. You can take kind of a cash mindset and then make a couple aggressive pivots within your lineup. And that's really how I try to structure. No set player pool in terms of a 3 max running 100% or anything. I changed that up. But it's more to me about knowing the field and knowing how aggressive you need to be.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's great. I think that nails it pretty much for 3 max, 20 max kind of stuff. So I'll just extend it to larger field stuff. I also think it depends on what sport you're playing. We talk about this sometimes, but like in NFL, sort of, you can find 1% players in NFL that are decent plays. You really can't in NBA because the variance is a lot smaller in the sport. So anyone who's a pretty good play, like your 1% owned guy is never going to beat your 40% owned guy. I mean, it just happens so rarely. It's hard to find good plays in NBA that are 1% owned. The times that you can are when you're speculating on injury, and that's much more viable on FanDuel now than it is on DraftKings now that we have late swap back. Or the occasional like wacky center. Like I had some of Hassan Whiteside the night he scored 80 a couple weeks ago when he was 1% owned, but that's just because he's an insanely high variance player. So you got to understand what kind of player you're getting into, or it's speculating on injury. But other than that, like you kind of got to eat the chalk in NBA because the chalk isn't going to fail. It's not going to fail as often, and it's certainly not going to fail as spectacularly as it does in the NFL. Or, like look at baseball. That's the big one, right? You got 30% owned Josh Donaldson against a lefty. It's like very easy for him to go 0-for-5. You can find 0.5% owned stacks that just score 14 runs all the time. It happens. So baseball much more, and even looking like intra-sport, right? Look at baseball. Like it's much more optimal to fade chalk hitters than it is to fade chalk pitchers because chalk hitters only get 4 or 5 chances. They're only facing 4 or 5 guys versus chalk pitchers are going to face 23 to 27 guys usually. So it's a very different sort of outcome. There's a lot less variance just from pitcher to batter. But then when going to 150, so first off, yeah, your sport. And then when going to 150 lineups, yeah, it's all about sort of trying to leverage a profile. So that's where you bring in something like Cruncher. You're trying to say, all right, this guy's 30% owned. I do or don't like him, right? And you want to take a position on that. If you think he's less than 30% likely to smash, but you still want some exposure, play 10% of him. If you think he's more than 30% likely to smash, then play 50 or 60 because you're going to have to get over the field and have it be anything meaningful. Yeah,
I mean, the easiest way to think about that is when you have 150 lineups, you can have you can be exposed to a guy 0.7%. when you're playing a 3-max, your minimum exposure is 33 and a third, obviously. So you can't take nuanced positions. The more lineups you have, the more you can really hone in on smaller positions. Again, a fine line between, you don't want to take no position on every guy because then you're just paying the rake. But that's really all it is. It's a process no matter what you do. I know people, I rarely, if ever, build 150. It's really difficult to do that, though, if you don't. It's certainly a process. That's a whole different skill set.
Yep. Sebediah had a question, or he's disagreeing about large slates, 1% owned, 10x punts being out there every night. I would strongly disagree that they're out there every night. They're out there, though, and you're right. I think especially on FanDuel with their new format where they have the drop the lowest score, when you're doing something like crunching lineups, build a group of all your punts, throw them out there. Play at least one of these guys because probably they're going to be my drop score, but maybe they're not, and maybe they just happen to go off. It's just that the point is, in NBA, a 1% owned play, especially if you're playing a smaller field tournament or in higher stakes, you probably kind of messed up. Versus in like golf, it's like, why the hell not? They're all kind of coin flips, so it doesn't really make. It's not that big of a deal to play 1% owned guys there.
And in the bigger the slate, obviously the more opportunity you have. If it's 10, 11 game slate, you're definitely more likely to get lesser owned guys.
If there's 400 players, there's going to be some 1% owned guys, and some of them aren't bad plays. Yes.
All right. Do you want to keep going here? We got plenty of questions in this chat. We got this is a quick one, but just a kind of a fun one. Is DFS gambling or skill? Entertainment? It's all of the above. The guy who you're just talking about, who asked that previous question, I 100% agree with him. What he said in the chat: everything's a gamble. Not getting in a car crash, taking a detour when you're going to work is a gamble. It's just you're evaluating a risk. There's a potential reward. This just happens to be monetarily. Yeah,
going on air like 45 minutes after you eat some hot and sour soup that you're not sure how it's gonna agree with you. That's a gamble. It's all a gamble, yeah.
Life's a gamble, for sure.
Indeed. Just try to be overweight on the field on the good ones, man,
Ben, another fellow Ben asks why I hate Tony Finau. I don't hate Tony Finau, but I will admit that I've been firmly against him in DFS for the past couple months, and it's just been a simple fact that he got to a point. There was a really good phase of where he's playing well, and he was a play that I wish I had. Then to me, he got over-owned and overpriced. And each week, I truly tried to evaluate it on the week itself. I took positions against him. All in all, it really didn't kill me too often, to be honest. Like, I know it seemed like it did here and there, but there was a lot of weeks where he was up there and he came in 14th. And when you're the third highest guy, not that that's a death sentence, but it's also not getting you there either.
Right. Yeah, it's hard. And when you get really expensive, too. Like last night, it was, Harden versus... I guess that's a bad example because Harden hit OT and he was killing it anyway. But it was against the Wizards, But, like, when, there were, like, 4 pretty viable high-priced studs, I would totally agree Harden was in the best spot. But he was also, like, 4 times the ownership. So I just kind of flattened that out, played a little of each of them, Someone like Giannis can beat that every night. And I'm a bigger Harden fan than most, I think. I'm generally going to be the one that goes all over him, goes over him compared to the field. So,
yeah, that's also a good point. Rory does blind me. That's one guy where I would admit I certainly have I just play him more often than I should. But what are you going to do?
Yeah. Well, that's interesting then. If we did Rory blinds you, Finau you hate. What about this week? Because I found out there was a slate this morning. I haven't even looked at the golfers. I mean, I know who's in it, but like I think this is a week for that theory is more important than kind of playing optimally.
100%. Like I'm happy to talk about the hero, and I don't think we should or will mention many plays because that's secondary. This is an 18-man. No one is taking it seriously. It's a course that's a resort. There's 5 par 5s. Birdie's going to be off. You're going to be scoring like wildfire. The thing is, though, this is an 18-man golf tournament, and you're picking 6 golfers. How do you be even close to, we talk about this during the FedEx Cup. how do you be unique in a 30-man? This is almost half of that. So this is more about these are all good guys. Be different. Leave money on the table.
Well, you saw Keegan's here, right?
Oh, okay. So there's 17 golfers and Keegan. So how do you be different? Well, and again, I don't think there's many bad teams to make when a situation like this. This is golf, and it's all good players.
So it's more about maximizing your upside, and you cannot get duped here. So, I mean, you can get duped, but it's like Showdown. You want to make sure if you get duped, you're duping with 5 people instead of 200. So,
yeah,
you just, and in golf where it's even weirder, I legitimately may go into this. I'm going to play some just because it's wild the tournaments DK made. They're like just as big as the ones they were running in the swing season. I'm probably going to play 150 drive the green lineups, and I may just set it at 49K cap because like you were saying, you basically can't make a bad lineup here. So sure, it would be nice to have like DJ and whoever else is expensive, but Tiger's 10-3. I'm going to play under that anyway. Like there's just this big report about how cooked he is, and he just lost to Phil.
Legitimately a situation that if I make 20 lineups, if you could guarantee that my lineups wouldn't be duplicated, I would take any combination of the players. Like it's that extreme to me.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it.
Like
Ben is saying literally you could make the lineup for him, and he would rather know that it's not duped than who the players are.
100%. It's not even close in a situation like this. In a 18-man, of course, it's a non-cut with these type of players. That's really going to be the approach that I will try to get a feel for what people are thinking. You got the Woodlands and Bubba's down there and guys like that. If they seem popular, I'll go elsewhere because this is, Justin Rose is the quote-unquote favorite. I get that. But again, this is not a great tournament to analyze because guys are it's the offseason. This doesn't really count for them.
No, it doesn't. They're out there having fun. It's in the Bahamas, It's going to be a good time.
No doubt. We do have some NBA questions in there, and honestly, as we were saying, your best get into Osimo. Obviously, check out the shows. They're going to be coming up. Deep Dive, Fast Eddie, all the good stuff. Josh's show from this morning. That's where you want to go. Check the projections.
Bam is not showing up in the projections as of yet. I did check that while you were talking there. But, those will change throughout the day, so make sure to check back early and often. We had a man take down a 120,000 entry tournament solo first by, crunching 150 with my projections last night. So, and obviously he did some things I'm not trying to take credit for that, but they are a tool that everyone can use. And if you have ideas of what you're doing, then please
It's a 5-gamer tonight, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is, this is interesting where it comes into like, I'm going to stack a little bit. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You can do those position stacks where you say put the point guard with at least 1 or 2 of a couple of these so that if you catch – because an OT on a 5-game slate is enough to make a stack. And an OT on a 13-game slate can be enough. But if you were just blindly stacking Rockets Wizards last night, didn't necessarily get you there.
Mm-hmm. What's going on with Tiger? Nothing much. Obviously, the Ryder Cup, that was a long stretch for him, and he was burnt out. Now he did the thing with Phil. This is going to be relaxing for him. He's certainly going to enjoy it, just like everyone else. The problem with Tiger, not that too many casuals are playing the hero golf on DraftKings. It's just he's a name that people love to click, especially now that he's good. Tiger is good. So nothing with him. Corollary courses, maybe like Kapalua, early in the season. You're just looking for resort type courses. This is 5 par 5s. They're going to tear this place apart.
Yeah, it's pretty easy, right? So yeah, I would say the Century is the only. I have no idea because this place doesn't have shot track. I will actually answer that question seriously with what is the most highly correlated course to these other ones when we have actual data, because I can build actual correlations for what skills work best from course to course, but you can't do that without. They didn't even have they started having driving accuracy and putts per GIR here last year. I was gonna pull those just to be like, who's done well here, but nothing.
The course, just real quick, It's extremely generous fairways. It's somewhat small greens. Chipping is a real problem for most people here. It's ugly. It's Bermuda, but guys are just going to smash it down there, have wedges, and make a ton of putts. And again, when the best players in the world are here, that just inflates it. Ricky had, I think he was 30 birdies last time, and he won last year.
Yep,
That's a lot.
It was an obscene. I actually have it right here. Ricky had 1.44 putts per GIR here last year.
Well,
that's dumb. What's the average is like 1.8, something like that. So it's pretty small greens. Like
not what Ricky did last year, that's for sure.
DJ was the worst putter in the field here last year, 1.84 putts per GIR. That's better than most worst putters are going to be. Let's just say that.
Yeah, this is like Tiger's little like island. I don't know exactly what him and Justin Rose have some ties there, but yeah, most of the guys have played. You know, they go down because they want to just get in some rounds and have a great vacation.
Yeah,
it's
Rose
not
is British, at least.
It's true. Can confirm.
Well, I'm saying that's a Bahamas connection, unlike Tigers.
Also can confirm. I like it. Going just real quick up the chat. Our friend Seth had mentioned something specifically about Capella, but I think it's an interesting thing. It's, you know, with cash to game theory. You know, you're going to see that a lot, especially in NBA, like the cash plays. Pivoting, it's a fine line. I don't really have a too insightful. I struggle with that myself. I think most people do, where it's like, I like this guy, but do I want to make my stand here in terms of pivoting in a GPP, or am I going to eat the chalk there and go differentiate and leverage elsewhere? To me, it's honestly a slate by slate, sport by sport thing. Opportunity cost, if there's other guys in the similar price range or similar position, I'm much more likely to make the pivot because it's not just about that player himself. Does that make sense?
It does. I think the sort of most basic way you can look at it is to say, what percentage owned do I think this guy's going to be? What do I think the probability of him crushing is going to be? And then how do I leverage the two of those? So last night, if you think Capella is going to be, like last night, Capella was 22% owned in GPPs. I'm guessing he projected a little bit higher than that. I can't remember off the top of my head. But if he is going to be 22% owned in GPP, you need to come down and say, I think there's a 35% chance that he is going to just like absolutely crush. And you can leverage that based on the sort of standard deviation of the player and looking at how much their projection that you're using, whatever it happens to be, differs from what you need them to have in their salary. So if you think there's a 35% chance he's going to crush, then go over the field on that 22%. That doesn't necessarily mean you play 60%. But if he's 22% owned and you think there's a 15% chance he does well, then you probably want to get under on that a little bit. So it's all about evening that out. But do people overthink game theory? No, I don't think they even think about it enough, to be honest. But it depends on sport. NBA, there's less game theory in it. It's more about just playing optimally. Golf, I think game theory is a lot more applicable in golf. If anyone's ever 40% owned in a golf tournament, I mean, less here because there's only 18 dudes, so I'm certainly going to play plenty of 40%. It's very rare that you're going to see a dude that's 40% owned in a golf tournament that's a plus expected value play, regardless of what happens with them.
Just to go back to the Tony Finau thing, that is what I'm talking about. Like when Tony Finau was getting to ownership levels that were absurd, especially in higher stakes. A lot of times when I should clarify this, a lot of times on pods and stuff, when I'm picturing like some of the higher stakes tournaments where ownership tends to be a little more aggressive on guys. So keep that in mind when I do some of those fades. But
if you've got a $3,500 starting point guard in NBA, that's not Quinn Cook, like a guy that's going to come in and actually hold the ball, like play point guard and like command the offense a little bit. If you've got one of those guys and he's 60% owned, I'm still going over the field on that because it's just the probability of that not failing is so high versus the probability of any golfer failing. The best golfers in the world make 75-80% of their cuts. So in a full field cut tournament event, the best golfers in the world have at least a 20-25% chance of just abjectly failing before we even get to the weekend. So
yeah. We have a couple questions, and this is more your territory, like about Cruncher. Do you want to speak on that? I don't.
What was
so there was one about Don in the Restream chat had, and then we have one in our premium Slack chat, just about, and this is both of us. You know, at what point do you stop hand building and start using Cruncher? I could speak to that real quick. For me, I only hand build, but I will say, when you're hand building, it can be tricky if you're going more than 30, 40 lineups. Like you really, I would advocate to use Cruncher. I know I don't. I want to be clear, I do not. But that's not to say that it's not extremely useful. If you're MMing, and you can do a little of both. You can make some by hand and then crunch some if you're building more of that portfolio type.
Yeah, you will build 50 golf lineups by hand, and that's kind of insane. Like, that's really difficult to do, and it's really difficult to do. And what's kind of nice about Cruncher, so there's drawbacks and quality parts of Cruncher, right? The drawback with Cruncher is, like, if you're just setting your exposures blind and then pressing, give me this many lineups, you don't know how those are put together. If you want to stack anything, right? Players together in NBA, skill sets in golf, you want to make sure I've got, because sometimes you'll be like, I want 50% Ricky and I want 50% Tiger, and then you crunch that and you have none where they're both in the lineup or whatever. Like I remember having that back in the day, and having to like get a little better on, I want to make sure that I have this many of each person with each other. I want to make sure all of my highest owned guys are in some lineups together. So I do a thing where I kind of, quote, crunch by hand, where I build like 2 or 3 or 5 lineups at a time with a couple of different parameters built, which goes to Don Harris's question. Would this be a situation where you'd set Cruncher to have 2 to 4 different players in each successive lineup? If that's in terms of uniqueness, I think that's viable. That's not as much my area. I'll usually do 2 unique on NBA. I've seen arguments to go higher on that. But as far as like potential, so tonight for like the game stack idea, I would be likely to, if I'm making 150 lineups, with 5, I'd do sort of 50 potentially naked, and then start working in different stacks for each game and be like, all right, this game, I'd like to have, 5 or 6 or 7 players from this game, depending. Again, the smaller the slate, like if it's a 2-game slate, I will make literally half my lives will have 7 players from one game and 1 from another. And then another quarter of them are going to have 6 players from one game and 2 from another. Because that's where you're just trying to get the game that goes nuts. Versus Makes on sense. A larger slate, and someone was saying before that Alex, the boss man, said something about that he rarely stacks NBA. And it's, yeah, I'm with that. I don't think stacking an NBA is the greatest idea, but when it gets to 8 or 9 or 10 games, certainly not. But smaller slates, the more viable it is, the more you're just trying to hit on a specific game. And then there are also certain players who do really highly correlate together. If you think about like Clint Capella with Chris Paul, right? Like how is Clint Capella getting a lot of his points? He goes and sets a pick for one of those dudes, Paul or Harden, and then dives to the basket. And if they're hitting him, that's the assist for Chris Paul and the dunk for Clint Capella. You want to be cognizant of that. And it can be very tricky to find out which players correlate well together, but some of that comes from watching basketball. Some of that can be done with straight number stuff, but it's worth keeping in mind. I do that. Even on like a 13-game slate, I'm unlikely to play someone like Capella without Paul or Harden or both.
Yeah, there's certain guys who just what they do, they're kind of reliant on, usually it's a point guard. I think that's pretty fair. If it's a spot-up shooter or a rim guy like that, where not always, but if they're really going, someone is probably got a leg up in terms of, they're getting them the ball in advantageous positions, so you're more likely to group them in.
Yep. One other thing from Don, he was asking for the golf tournament this week, and and yes, for uniques. This one, I mean, and I don't think it's a big deal to even worry about that. So I'm fine with one unique because there's only 18 players. So there's only, I don't know. I can do the combinatorics on that in a second. But it's whatever 18 factorial divided by 12 factorial times 6 factorial are the total even possible number. And that doesn't even count for a bunch that are no good for salary reasons. So there are not that many different lineups. So I'm fine with one unique. In this case, but and normally I will make half of them with one unique and then kind of get to bigger ones. But I'll run some with two unique as well.
And this is strictly Spence asking. Yeah, I'm not playing cash for this golf. I have no desire to do that.
Yes.
Don't even know where you're to begin because cash is more about you're not worried. Like we're talking about I think the biggest advantage is not getting duped. In cash, it's like that's out the window. So what are you're picking the most optimal plays from a spot that I don't see much to really sort through, to be honest.
Yeah, it's 17 of the best 25 or 30 players in the world and Keegan. So it's really hard to pick.
All right, we got.
Why are you talking NBA, golf guy?
Yeah, I know. Sorry. This is a slow time for golf. I wish it wasn't. Believe me, I do love the NBA, but I love golf too. We will be back in full force. Don't worry, Tim is resting. Golf will be here, and once it starts in January, I know some people may not like golf. Tuesdays we are going to be. It's all going to be golf. So this is a little hiatus for us. We're trying to mix and match. Today's a grab bag, where we can answer your questions.
And we're DFS players. It's literally what we do for a living. We play all the sports. So the golf guy thing. Little bit frustrating.
Yeah, that's so. How do we react to news and anything? It's tricky. You want to make sure your process lines up with that's part of the reason in NBA I don't build as many lineups, because if news reacts, especially on a site like DraftKings with late swap, you need to re-optimize it all, and I'm not capable of doing that. So why would I play as much when I'm clearly at an advantage if late news breaks? FanDuel it locks, so it's like, okay, I can be cognizant, and then it's a crapshoot. I will get burnt sometimes, and so will everyone else sometimes, and I'll be in an advantage.
Yeah, and I'm certainly playing more on FanDuel this year. I used to play almost exclusively on DraftKings. Late swap coming back it's not. I don't think that's good. It's not good for me, and I'm pretty good at changing a lot of stuff on the fly. But I'm not as good as Utica or Osmo. Like I just can't do it like they can. So that every time something like that happens and you've got these monster players with crazy volume that are able to make the switches even better, that's how Sahil rose to prominence, right? He was offshoring like people to change his lineups for him before like anyone knew how to do that. So he could react to news at 5 of 7, and that's how he killed on everyone. And then everyone caught up to him. So it can be pretty tough for that. And FanDuel, also, if you're playing over there, that gives you the chance to do the injury speculation thing again, right? You're looking at these projections that everyone's looking, everyone's projections are somewhat similar at least, right? But if you think Kawhi Leonard's not going to play and that game doesn't start till, 2 hours after lock, then you should be the one that's going to play all the Siakam, and you might get him at a crazy low ownership kind of deal. So,
and just to further that, you're even more incentivized to do it now because you get to drop a spot. So say you're wrong. Well, then Siakam's maybe your drop and you're not completely dead. Like it used to be on FanDuel, that was a really good strategy. But if you got it wrong, you're probably toast, especially if it's a real aggressive one. Now you do have an extra out. Yeah, you're playing quote unquote without a drop, most likely. But that it really is a way to take advantage. And you don't have that with a late swap site.
Yeah. Some of the best NBA nights I've ever had in my life were coming down one way or another on Julius Randle 2 years ago. Actually, I won on Martin Luther King Day last year. I won the early $33 GPP, and a lot of that I got a tip from Adam that it was literally that he didn't think Kawhi Leonard was going to play. So I forget what Spurs player I had in there. I mean, I'm sure it was Aldridge, but somebody was super low owned considering it was a 4-game slate, but. Took that down for 15K because there wasn't late swap, and it was just happened to be on the news and guessed right. So, regardless of whether, he was certainly less owned than he would have been or than he's going to be this year on DraftKings specifically.
Yeah. No, I mean, it is what it is, and every sport is different. Every slate is. But generally, if your process is building 150 lineups and you have no way to, if you're moving like a snail to react, you shouldn't be building 150. If you can do it, that's awesome.
Right.
I certainly can't. I know I can't, so I plan accordingly.
Great point Sebadiah is making here.
Yeah,
When I'm doing
absolutely.
a standard 150 build, I can rebuild in 3 minutes, but not when doing a lot of specialized stacks and all that. Yeah, that's the hard part. That's definitely the hard
That's
part.
where it gets tricky.
If news breaks 5 minutes up, you just gotta have a plan for what you're going to do, and it's not going to be as specialized. It's just not. Like, I don't get, if I have 150 and something crazy happens 5 minutes beforehand, then I'm not gonna have all the fancy specialized stacks I wanted to do before, because it's gonna, even if I'm like lightning quick about that, it's still gonna take me 6-8 minutes. So
All right, we got a couple more. Then we're gonna bounce on out of here. Honestly, chat really owe you one today. We got some questions before the show, but we were wondering how much people would drop. These have been awesome questions, so we really do appreciate it. If you could also just hit the like button, that would be incredible. But we do appreciate taking down a slow Tuesday with us. Question from our premium Slack, and this is a tough one to answer, but we can talk about it a little. It's just asking about cash game ROI, like kind of where do you think it falls for really good players? I know it's different by sport and whatnot. It's it's tough. I'd say NBA cash is borderline dead. I
yeah,
mean,
you can't beat it.
it's very very hard. Other ones, I don't even want to speculate. I have no idea. Maybe there are some people out there who are just like murdering cash at a ridiculous rate. I have no clue. What I'll say is, no matter what stakes you're at, you want to do. This is how I think you should evaluate cash and just anything. It's either if you're playing in really targeted games, your ROI may be really high, but you don't have enough volume. So then you can say, okay, is it worth it for me to try to scale this, play a lot more higher stakes? I'm going to lower my ROI, but it's more volume. Obviously, if you play, a ridiculous amount a year, $10 million, if your ROI is 5%, it's not bad, of course. If you're only playing a small, you're going to need a higher ROI if you're really looking to make money. So it's just a blend of, if people have determined they can beat cash, you want to scale it as much as you can and still be profitable. It's just a fine line of how much do I move up stakes and play more, get more volume down, or do I try to cherry pick easier, softer spots, keep that ROI up, but I can't churn that as fast, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, most of these guys that are sitting in the like nosebleed stakes are doing it so that if there's a massive whale that comes in, they get access to that, and they're hoping that some random player like comes in there. I think when Chipotle Addict and Make It Rain are just like bashing against each other in $5,300 head-to-heads, like neither of them's making money off of that because DraftKings is taking money off of the top. So even if it's only a 6% thing, then one of them has to beat the other at 56% of the time. Like two world-class players are not beating each other at 56% of the time.
No, I'm
one
sure
way or the other.
most of them probably, I would speculate, unregister. They're unfilled because you don't want to be auto-matched in a finite pool of three people.
Right.
Who are all mostly sharp. It's true. If you're sitting high stakes, you're looking for randos to, there are people out there. It happens. So that's something. It's an interesting
Especially
question.
like guys with names and stuff like that. People would come after, like Condia got a lot of action back in the day because people wanted to go after number one. Like,
No, I mean, that's definitely a thing. So yeah, there's no real answer. It's just I struggled with that this year specifically. I had a really good year last year and I started off this year really, really, really well. And I was like, do I want to pump it up more and flatten my ROI to I knew it was going to take a hit if I did that, or do I want to just keep doing what I'm doing?
it's different for golf too. For players like you and I think we're in a bit of a unique position because I don't know. I don't want to. I'm trying to think of how to say this. Some of the very big heavy hitters still play golf cash, and you can get action against them in head-to-heads. They're not as good at golf as they are at other sports, and they're just trying to get action. So for a while, there were certain guys that you could pluck off, $215 head-to-heads here and there against. For us, that was, a little bit different than like sitting NFL and, NBA like big time stakes, because the people just, the big time players still play big time golf, but their edge is not as big as it would be in other sports. And I think where we are just as good at golf as the other sports, like I think it's a little easier to crank out a positive ROI in golf cash.
Yeah, golf cash is more. I'll put it like this: golf cash is definitely beatable. I don't know if I can beat it, I'll be honest, but people can beat it. It's not like NBA where it's just really hard for, I think, on a macro level. Golf cash can be. It's just golf in general is a brutal sport because there's cuts and but
you got to be playing really bad players to be able to. If you think about an NBA cash game, if it's a head-to-head that's being raked at 10%, you've got to win it more than, considerably more than that 55 to break even there. And, like, it's really hard to beat. Like, there's good information out there, so everyone's got good access to good information. I misspoke earlier, by the way. If it's raked at 6%, they'd have to win at 53%, right? But it's really hard to beat just about anyone consistently 55% of the time. Like we talk, Haralabob's the greatest sports bettor of all time, right? He's got to beat that 5 or 10% rake, and like he would win 56, 57% of his bets and be like, yeah, best season I've ever had. Like no one's just murdering this stuff all the time. So.
Yeah, if you get and cautionary tale on the Twitter world, like if you have anyone who's like 29-2 in my last 30, like no one's betting sports at a clip like that.
Nope.
And just to wrap that point up for me, I think in DFS, especially in cash, there are spots where you can win at a pretty ridiculous rate, especially if you're not over the $1 million threshold and you can play sub $5 cash. The problem is you can't scale some of those spots. So there are people, golf, other sports where, it's like I know the name and I think I can beat them at a big clip, but I don't have unlimited action against them. It's not like I can say I want to get down hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that's where, again, you can you find the line of where you're like, all right, are these games, I'm getting extra volume, but is this over the threshold that I can beat? Or do you just cherry pick where you feel the strongest and sacrifice some volume? That is, I think, a really important question.
Yes, I think that's true. But, 50 each, which is your max. If you're below the $1 million threshold, you can play 50 each. $1, $2, $3, $5 head-to-heads a night, which is $700, something like that. Either way,
it's true.
It's
true.
$650.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like, if you think you have a big edge in NBA, like, go for it down there. But even at those lower stakes, I guess what I'm saying is, like, in NBA head-to-heads, like, it's not fish down there, just because it's really hard to be a fish,
No, but I think we both would agree that you're much better doing it down there than playing it with 3 or 4 of the really, really sharp. Like a 5-man with 4 of the top guys is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, don't go play like Dink and CSU Ram or whatever. Like, and they also those players also have more money than you. That's a underappreciated part is like they can absorb losing to you 7 days in a row. Can you absorb losing to them 7 days in a row?
Well, that just goes. We're not going to get into bankroll management, but yeah, I get questions all the time, people who are satellited into a tournament that they're not used to playing. The number one rule if you're playing satellites, be prepared to win it and play like you normally would in the bigger tournament. If you're playing tournaments where you're trying not to lose or you're like, oh God, this is my one chance, you got to just do it. I know it's uncomfortable, but just build how you build.
You probably got that satellite entry. It's not like you got that with your cash lineup. So you did something uncomfortable to get there in the first place. So got to keep doing that. There is over on Thrive, which we are sponsored by. They have an Awesemo branded contest tomorrow. $2 entry fee. Any new users can get a free $2 credit to play in the contest with no deposit commitment necessary. So if you could check that out, promo code from A to B. It's worth taking a look at. Over on Thrive Fantasy. It's kind of like a parlay card sort of thing. It should be some cool stuff. Yeah. And then, what do we got? Oh, we were going to talk about holidays. We don't really have time for that this time, but it's good.
Thanksgiving's overrated. Christmas is good. End of the holiday thread.
That is a garbage take.
I like Thanksgiving. I just don't like the food.
Yeah, I mean that's fine, but like, I think what's fun about Thanksgiving is it's Christmas without all the pressure. I also have them separated. So it's sort of like your family holidays versus like friends holidays, right? Like 4th of July and Halloween are not in the same category of holiday.
I am not a Halloween fan.
Yeah, I'm not either.
Like college,
I was gonna ask, when did you ever dress up for Halloween in college?
Oh yeah, like I went to UMass, huge, like one of the best days of the year. Like Halloween's an awesome time. It's fun in the right setting, but like no, I'm not a huge Halloween fan in general. I don't love scary movies. I'm not a big candy guy, so like the optics of it, not ideal.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I don't really care for Halloween. Never. I'm not a costume guy. I don't hate the night. Like I played music a lot, and we would do like my friends and I would always do this. That's Misfits cover show on Halloween. We did often.
That
those were a good time.
The worst day. Last thing I'll say, and then we can get on. I think Chad. I hope society would agree. The most overrated day of the year is New Year's Eve. That is the worst. Like more power to you if you're one of those people that stands to see that ball in New York City. I wouldn't do that for a disgusting amount of money. I've been in, I live in New York. I live right above the city. I've been in the city, just in the city on New Year's Eve, and it's a shit show every time.
Yes. Don, sharp take. Halloween is not a holiday. It is not a federal holiday, but it's celebrated as a holiday. So we're including it here and tossing it out. So whatever. I'd rather talk about the validity of Halloween than I would how awesome President's Day is, for instance. But yeah, New Year's Eve is the nut low. I also played in bands, worked in restaurants, so I never did anything on New Year's Eve other than deal with other people anyway. So
last year's New Year's Eve was one of the coldest days I've ever been in New York. I was frozen, and it used to be the college football playoff. The games were on the last 2 years ago. They scheduled the playoff games there, which was great because I would just tell May like we're going to dinner and we're coming home and watching these games. But now they've changed that, so I have to think of a new excuse.
I'm with Spencer too. NFL cash less egregious. I do play a fair amount of NFL cash. I just really don't play NBA at all because I'm not allowed to play at the $1, $2, $3 level, but it's really hard to beat someone in a just 2v2 consistently because in an NBA cash lineup, 6 of those plays are locked in there for you. So by the time all the news shakes out, most nights you're gonna be playing the same lineup as very similar lineup to a lot of people. So
no, and if you want to do it, more power to you. If you're disciplined and you have the time. The thing for me, I don't play NBA cash because it's a lot of time for possibly negative money, or even if I was beating it, it wouldn't be at a huge rate. Not going to get crazy volume either. But yeah, Levitan, I just want to say, his Thanksgiving, that's what I am also on that bandwagon. I am a big, I had a lobster and I had a nice steak and it was lovely.
That's your prerogative, but when you start talking about that shit like that's Thanksgiving food, that's where everyone gets tilted at you.
That's a fair, I agree with that. That was aggressive. And you're right. Of the Thanksgiving food, yeah, mashed potato. Turkey's fine. I'm not chicken. Someone in chat, I just saw something about chicken. Yes, play a fly. Chicken is always good. It's just a great food. But a little surf and turf never hurt anyone. I don't know why everyone's so down on surf and turf.
It's just, I don't know. I just don't really care for lobster.
That's the fishiest take, folks. You don't know he's from Maine, and he says that is insane.
No, that's what makes. I've spent a lot of time around it. It's not that big of a deal. It's overrated food. Actually, Levitan's take on this too, by the way, is that he thinks we're savages as a society for eating so much meat. So maybe you're heading even more towards his take on your fancy new diet. You know?
Yeah, the diet that's lasted 48 hours, and I'm dying. I just want to go have a nice brisket burrito. But I'm not going to do that. Anything else before we get on out of here?
No, stop crapping on the holidays. I think that's fair. I love Thanksgiving. And then 4th of July is my favorite, friends holiday. I really enjoy again, growing up in Maine where the weather sucks a lot of the year. It's sort of the beginning of the height of summer. You go outside. It's basically legal to drink on the streets, watching fireworks. This was my first 4th of July in Los Angeles. 4th of July in Los Angeles is fucking nuts. The amount of fireworks is so unhealthy, but like really fun to watch. So I get down with 4th of July.
Yeah, that's all right. It's a standard holiday.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else from you, bud? Anything to plug?
No. So since there's no golf, or quote unquote this hero golf, we're not gonna have anything tomorrow. We are unveiling some stuff over at awesemo.com that me and Andrew are working on. Some betting stuff, some articles, evergreen content. So stay tuned for that. That's what we're gonna be doing. But Thursday, back in business, we're bringing in, of course, the third fellow, Lofty. Big showdown slate. It's a good game. Cowboys, Saints. Then we're going to get going. So for the golf, if you have questions, obviously hit us up on Twitter. If you're in our Slack chat, just talk to us there. We're going to be talking golf there. If you're not, use the promo code. Sign up for, check out the deals we have. Get a free week. Use the Cyber Monday. Do one of those. Hop on in and give it a shot. So that's all for me. What about you? Anything?
By position breakdown on Friday.
Definitely. We'll be talking, and I'll be talking. We will make time for college football on Friday. We've been a little busy with it, but we will make time for that. The championship games. Talk a little what scenarios about the playoff, because it's coming down to the wire now.
It is. All right. Well, thanks for listening, everyone. If you don't mind giving us a like if you haven't yet, that would be awesome. Appreciate it. Appreciate all of you tuning in. Ben, get some food, man. You look...
I will. I'm hungry.
Yeah. All right. Take care, everyone.